This what's interesting. During the interview process, one of the questions they asked me was, how are you going to ingrain yourself? And I had done my research, so I knew the various programs they had. I was like, I want to attend all the programs you have. I want to learn from the very basics of it to the expertise. I want to have conversations with the committee leaders, past chairs. I want to understand the industry. I was like, I'm an association professional. I am trained and educated on how to run an association. And I can come in and plug and play that knowledge on anything. I said, but what I need to know is the intricacies and the uniqueness and the particular parts of the industry. I was like, and that's where you come in. I was like, we are working in this in partnership. So that's what I did. Even though I signed my contract in May and I did start till the end of July, I took a week in June and went to their venue management school for a full week. And I sat in a class with them. So I was in the class, I had 40 other people who had been in their career maybe 5, 6, 7 years in venue management. They knew who I was because people pointed it out, but they treated me like anybody else. I spent my evenings talking with the faculty who were also past chairs of the organization. So I really got to ingrain myself in that. And the feedback we got, that the board got, was they felt like they found someone who was authentic to who they were and wanted to do what's right for the organization and lead it forward.
This is Associations Thrive, the podcast celebrating successful associations and their leaders. I'm your host, Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker at Matrix Group International. Listen in as top association executives tell all, revealing the creative and innovative ways they're increasing membership, generating revenue, nurturing engagement, and reimagining their organizations. By the way, if you've launched a new initiative, created new member services, or updated your governance structure and are seeing great results, I want to hear your story, and so do my listeners. I'd love to have you as a guest. Go to podcast.matrixgroup.net and apply to be on Associations Thrive. Now let's dive into this week's show. Today, I'm speaking with Trevor Mitchell, President and CEO of the International Association of Venue Managers, or IAVM. Trevor, welcome back to Associations Thrive.
Happy to be here.
Trevor, tell us about IAVM.
IAVM is the organization with over about 8,000 members from around the world that manage venues, whether they be arenas, stadiums, performing arts centers, convention centers, amphitheaters, fairgrounds. If a live event happens inside a physical space, that is probably our members who are helping to run those venues. We provide everything from education to advocacy to connections, to community, to certifications. We're here to help support our members to do their jobs to create amazing experiences for the people who are coming in and out of their venues every single day.
And Trevor, how do you define a live event? Is that a concert? Is that a sporting event? What's considered a live event?
We define a live event anywhere where people gather. Now, hotels we don't include within ours because they have a strong association of their own, but these are more physical structures. So it can be a concert, it can be a Broadway show, it could be a sporting event from basketball to football. We're all gearing up and talking with our various arenas and stadiums who will be hosting the World Cup in 2026. We're talking about the various venues in LA that will be hosting the Olympics in 2028. But then also from the association standpoint, convention centers. We all use convention centers in any form or fashion for various events. Partnerships with organizations such as the International Association of Exhibits and Exhibitions around trade shows. These venues are the ones where people are coming in and out, general public, purchasing tickets, paying for registration. They're the ones here doing those things. And so live events happen in all those spaces. It's interesting also for us because as event space is changing, we're looking at what does that mean for our association. So talk about what you consider a megachurch that has large facilities. Those might be considered a live event venue. We're seeing more complexes where you have multiple types of venues owned and managed by a single entity, and they may be bringing in different things. So we're really starting to expand even our own traditional knowledge of what a live and venue space is to be more accommodating, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure people run those properly so that the individuals who are coming in and out of them are safe and have an enjoyable experience.
And Trevor, just so we're clear, the venues themselves are not the members. It's the people that run the venues.
That is correct. Our membership model is a professional individual based membership approach. We do offer what we call our group membership or staff membership, depending on how association terminology is. And they can pay for a bulk of individuals, but the individual has the membership, because we do see members who will go from one particular venue type to another, or they will move from venue to venue. And so it's important for us to talk about how these individuals are able to do their roles, but also navigate their career with inside the venue management profession.
And are your members just the really large venues? Or like, I'm thinking about Nandusapalooza a few years ago. Remember, it was at that winery. I think we were in Nashville. There were maybe 100 people at the event, but it was a live event. Would that winery possibly be a member, or is that too small or too specific?
The winery, maybe, like with wineries and places that tend to do not necessarily the size of the event, but the type of event, maybe more like a specialty event association rather than ours, but definitely they could be a member of ours. For us, it's not always the really large. We think of the really large because that's what naturally comes to mind. When I think about being here in the DFW area, you think of American Airlines Center where the Dallas Mavericks and Stars play. I think about AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play.
Right, right.
But then I also think about Toyota Music Factory, which is an amphitheater in Irving that seats a couple of thousand individuals. I think about the Dickies Arena over in Fort Worth that holds about 11 to 12,000 people. I think about those kinds of venues as well. The large venues like the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, AT&T, they do 800 plus events a year with inside their single facility.
Oh my God. Wow.
When you think about it, there's only 365 days a year. So how are they doing 800 events? So they can do smaller events and various things throughout their venue for 50, 200 people, in addition to doing large events, doing big dinners on the floor. I recently just had my board meeting down at Arlington, and we had our board dinner at Globe Life Field where the Texas Rangers baseball team plays. They are a member. They hosted us. We did a little tour. We had dinner, but we had this private space that they have that they use for various things depending on what event is happening there. So we never look at it in terms of size of capacity or what they hold. We look at it in terms of what they're doing and how can we better support them. So that's how we look at our venues. So it is all ranges and sizes, and we're just here to support whatever their needs are.
Wow. Well, we got a lot to talk about because you are thriving as an association, but we first got to talk about your journey. You and I have known each other a long time. I met you when you were at ARMA. Then you moved to American Mensa, and now you're at IAVM. So what was it about IAVM that dislodged you from American Mensa? And I did a fantastic interview with you, I guess about 24 months ago, that I will put a link to in the show notes. So talk to us about this big new opportunity that you embarked on.
I'm someone who's very committed, someone who is very passionate about what they do. Being at Mensa was a great experience for me.
And you were there a long time.
I was on staff for a total of 9 years. I was their CEO for 6.5. And I got really connected to the people. It was hard for me to make that leap. But when the opportunity for IAVM came along and I started looking at not only the position, but what the organization is about, it felt right. It felt like that was the next step for me in my career. And I felt I was leaving Mensa in a good place for them to have the next leader that they needed to come in and help move them further along in their journey while I continued on in mine. And from the very onset with IAVM, in the interview process, every step of the way, I just kept thinking to myself, this is right. This feels right. It's a complete marriage of my professional experience as well as my personal passion about bringing people together and knowing that venue managers are in the business of creating environments where people come together to have amazing experiences. And if those venues are doing all the things right, the attendees don't notice a single thing on the background.
Right.
And every step of the way, every time I talked to a recruiter, I was like, this is it. If they offer me the job, I'm taking it. Like, how do we move forward? And I will say, after my final interview, I had a dinner with the executive committee. I got done and I said, while I've only had this dinner with them for 2 hours, I felt like I've known them forever. And it was a no-brainer at that point. I was like, this is the right move. And I have no regrets. I have been enjoying every moment ever since. So that's how I got where I am. Like, it just is the right time, right org, right place for me and right for them.
Boy, how interesting that it really allows you to focus on something that you love, which is gathering and convening people. And now your members gather and convene people.
That is correct. It's so much fun. I enjoy it all.
Well, Trevor, let me ask you a question. So you've been at the helm of 3 individual membership organizations, very different industries and professions. So how do you immerse yourself in the next profession? And how do you gain enough expertise so that you have credibility with the board and with the membership? Because this has to be a task.
It does. And I will tell you, this is what's interesting. During the interview process, one of the questions they asked me was, how are you going to ingrain yourself? And I had done my research, so I knew the various programs they had. I was like, I want to attend all the programs you have. I want to learn from the very basics of it to the expertise. I want to have conversations with the committee leaders, past chairs. I want to understand the industry. I was like, I'm an association professional. I am trained and educated on how to run an association. And I can come in and plug and play that knowledge on anything. I said, but what I need to know is the intricacies and the uniqueness and the particular parts of the industry. I was like, and that's where you come in. I was like, we are working in this in partnership. So that's what I did. Even though I signed my contract in May and I didn't start till the end of July, I took a week in June and went to their venue management school for a full week. And I sat in a class with them.
Oh, wow.
So I was in the class. I had 40 other people who had been in their career maybe 5, 6, 7 years in venue management. They knew who I was because people pointed it out, but they treated me like anybody else. I spent my evenings talking with the faculty who were also past chairs of the organization. So I really got to ingrain myself in that. And the feedback we got, that the board got, was they felt like they found someone who was authentic to who they were and wanted to do what's right for the organization and lead it forward. So as we continue to talk, and I was like, well, from an association standpoint, this is what we look like. And I would, of course, fill that in on whatever the topic was. And they'd give me that advice. I'm like, here's how we marry it. This is how we do these things together. I recently just had a comment from one of our board members who said, I finally feel like we're beginning to do the things we've always said we wanted to do. We just haven't done before. And he said, my only disappointment is I'm rolling off the board and I don't get to be a part of it.
Ah,
And I said, but you get to be a part of it in a different way.
yeah.
So it's about those conversations. It's about ingraining yourself. As someone who's a high eye on the disc profile of that big influencer, the people part is really big. And I think that's what the organization needed from at least me coming into this role, is to be able to bridge those gaps and help bring that together with the membership. That way we can move forward together.
Well, Trevor, that was absolutely brilliant, attending that week-long program, because it showed them that you're committed, because you gave them an entire week. Also, a way to develop a cohort.
Yes.
Right? And to get steeped in the vocabulary.
Yes.
Because for 40 hours and probably 60 hours, because you were hanging out in the evenings, you're hearing the acronyms and the language and the up at night issues, so that now you're actually bringing the concerns, the opportunities, and the challenges of the members to your staff and to the leadership. Oh my God, that is brilliant, Trevor.
Yeah. And I would do it again. I'm going back to this. I mean, granted, I'm going back now as the CEO, but I'm going to sit through year 2. Unless they pull me out of the class to deal with an issue, I'm sitting through year 2. And we're working with a partnership with our Australian counterpart, where next year I will go to theirs for their leadership summit, and then he will come to ours for our leadership summit. And the 2 CEOs will do this together through that program. So I think it's all about ingraining yourself and understanding it. I've never run a venue, but I have been a consumer. I have signed convention center contracts and working with convention center people. I go to concerts and sporting events all the time. So I see all this stuff. Some of the terminology was actually really easy for me to transition, because I'm like, oh, I'm no longer the customer. I can understand from the venue side.
Right.
But there was a lot of nuances. I'm like, okay, let's talk about like, what does this mean and how does this work? And, I hadn't thought about parking issues and safety and security around parking and ticketing and that stuff I just hadn't normally dealt with. And it gave a new perspective, but I was able to connect what my knowledge to theirs and do this. And I will tell you, some of those people in that class still call me up, be like, Trevor, you mentioned this. I'm like, I know. I was like, also, it's been 6 months. They're like, okay,
Right. They're keeping you honest.
right. They are. But I'm talking to people who are most likely going to be future leaders of the organization at some point. A unique story that came up. So we do this thing, and I had never seen this before, and I think it's an amazing opportunity. We have interns at that school as well as at our annual conference. And so the intern who was in my classroom, she sat behind me. We talked a lot. She was asking me a lot of questions, which was great. But by the end of the day, it helps her to kind of grow her professional network, everything else. Well, then she gets assigned to be my intern at our annual conference. And her job is to make sure I get where I need to be because everybody wants to stop and talk to you.
Absolutely.
I'm all for it. But I was like, you're getting ready to graduate. You have your degree in engineering. What are you looking to do? Because I knew she worked at the Performing Arts Center on campus. And we started talking and everything else. And by the end of the week, she had a job.
Nice.
She had a job offer. And she's like, I wanted to get into the venue stuff. And so like I'm seeing opportunities here through these various programs of like connecting. So for me, I was like, you're helping me out to make sure I get fed, I get where I need to be, and I do all the things I need to do. It's like, how can I help you? And that's part of why we do this program. Almost every one of our interns always has a job offer by the end of the week because of what they did. And most of the time they're helping take attendance, they're helping the speakers, but they're also just connecting. And so for us, it's about creating a community. And so that cycle of bringing students into the workforce and then hopefully seeing them, there are some who are on my board who were used to be interns. They're like, oh, I was so-and-so intern 15 years ago. So it's interesting to see how this community really evolves. And I got to see it from the very ground level.
Trevor, let's turn to IAVM. How's membership?
Membership's good. We are growing. We hit our 8,000 member mark in December. That was a goal in 2024 was to get to 8,000. We had hoped to do it a little sooner, but we finally got there.
And is that the first time you've hit 8,000?
It is.
Wow.
I have challenged the staff that in 3 years, I want us to be at 10,000.
Nice.
With the caveat that we focus on having fully engaging, meaningful members, not just numbers.
Ah.
We're an organization providing value and resources. We're not about just hitting a number. I was like, if we're not doing the first right, we'll never get to the number anyway, because we're not putting meaningful growth into place.
So how are you measuring that engagement? If you get to 10,000, how do you know that you've got engaged members? What are you looking at?
Great question. Don't have an answer for that yet.
Okay.
That is actually something we came up with in our strategic planning session last month of what we need to do. And so that's something we'll be exploring over the course of this year is how do we determine engagement? And I have already said that engagement isn't just a transaction. It isn't just purchasing a registration. That doesn't show engagement. It's not making a comment in our online community. We got to figure out what we mean by engagement there. And knowing that different members will have different needs and different levels of expertise, that their engagement may look different. I think part of it's going to be maybe a combination of what are they consuming with inside the organization, but then also how do they feel about it? Our net promoter score, is it moving us forward in a way because they see the value that they're getting? So we'll figure out the math, we'll figure out what it works, but I'm really excited to determine what engagement really means for us that can articulate what that meaningful piece is. And I'm a big proponent of while I metrics and measurements, it doesn't always have to be numeric. So it could be we're hitting major milestones, like our mentorship program is growing by this. It can be those kinds of things that are all accumulated into a bigger scorecard of how we're defining engagement. So that's exciting on the course of the year. And my membership team is really excited to be able to actually engage in that conversation themselves.
Well, that's amazing that you're focused on engagement and that you're experiencing growth. So what is driving this growth? Share some secrets with us.
For us, what's driving growth, and it's actually an interesting effect that the board had not thought of, is when we moved to this group model of membership, it historically had always been the general manager or senior leaders of the venue. It wasn't going down into further areas of the organization. And now with this group membership, you have people who are event coordinators or assistant directors of security or directors of ticketing. Like, we're now being able to infuse the organization and put this all together. I actually just had a call the other day with the sales directors at convention centers because they feel they don't have a home in any association.
Oh,
And we're like, well, you are still part of the venue. You're helping bring in sales and traffic into the center when that's not being sold by the CBB itself. So let's talk about how do we add value? How do we create this sub-community environment for yourselves so you have a home? Because what you still bring this all back to your center yourself. So it's us looking at all that.
so what does it mean to have a group membership where previously, if I was the general manager, I would become a member? So now do you make it really financially attractive to pay for more people?
Yes.
Ah,
So with our group membership, the bigger the block is, the reduction of the dues price per individual. So like I think right now, individual dues are like $650. I would say if you do a tier 3, which is a 30 block membership, it goes down to about $175 per person.
oh, wow. Okay. So really financially attractive.
Really financially attractive. Yes.
But Trevor, it's one thing to say, hey, more people can become members of IAVM, but it's another to show value to the different people. So like, CEOs often it's obvious, but what about the facilities guy? What about the salesperson? So how do you show value in all these different sectors?
That was the interesting part that the board and the organization hadn't really thought about. They had thought about bringing in the numbers, but they hadn't thought about what this does to the organization. Because two things that happened as we were surveying for our strategy, and that was identifying that because there are more people at those levels within inside venues, also gives a greater number of individuals.
Ah,
So you're going to have 5 event coordinators where you're going to have 1 general manager,
right.
for example, in a particular venue. So what we see reflected in our survey results is the fact that we're seeing more and more needs and demands and requests for education content at those lower middle levels, as well as how do we help them navigate their career transition throughout. And because of that, you see more bodies coming to our live events, but it isn't always necessarily an influencer or someone with buying power. That's the piece of the equation we're having to work through. And I'm excited that we're going to start working on actual mapping out what are the various levels within a venue that someone may come into the organization. What are the type of venues we have? And how might someone navigate through that? What are the gaps that are there in our current offerings that we need to address? What are things we should own? And what are the things that we should partnership with other organizations that do this specifically and help give that value there so everyone feels that they're getting and have access to what they need to do either currently or as they try to advance. So we're really going to be working on that educational roadmap and strategy and implementing it over the course of the year. In the next couple of months, we'll also be launching our learning management system. So we'll be able to do more micro credentials, more online education and everything. What has been the most successful up until this point is we host a significant amount of monthly or quarterly town halls based on various topics. And it gives them a chance to actually have conversations about things that are meaningful to them. And I have tasked my team with how can we take that and turn that into content for the website, content for the magazine, content for our newsletters, content in terms of other education, contents in terms of research. I was like, this is our focus group breeding ground of opportunity here. And how can we do this? Because not only does it benefit our members, it's a great membership recruitment tool. And then furthers all of our other conversations in the public realm, whether it be other associations, whether it be with legislative, no matter who it is, we have the things to help back us up of here's what's actually happening, what's being discussed with inside our membership.
Well, let me ask you about the town hall. So when I think of a town hall, I think of everybody's invited and you can come ask questions of the leadership. Did you start this?
I cannot take credit for this. These town halls are actually started during the pandemic.
Ah,
Some of them were started by sector. So by sector, we mean venue type.
sporting events versus convention centers. Okay.
Correct. Sometimes the town halls will be around safety and security. Sometimes it may be around guest experience. They kind of set the agenda. Staff helps to coordinate and everything else. So it's not even a town hall with me. Sometimes I pop in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be joining one of our regional town halls, and they do want to ask me questions, which is fine. Like, I'm here for that. But that's one of the things that we're really doing, is trying to understand what are our members' needs, how do they want to engage, and how do we provide them with those opportunities. And the town halls just continue, they keep asking for more. And I said, I'm kind of running out of staff resources, just because we'd be on town halls all the time. So we're trying to find a good balance, but then also saying, well, here's what the online community is for. Like, let's take these conversations to there in the meantime, and let's move these forward. But that's where these town halls originated from.
Trevor, I'm fascinated by this. So they started during the pandemic, and they continue because somehow the members want to continue to gather in an unstructured way.
Correct.
Where they share their concerns and share information. Are these monthly, quarterly? How often are they held?
So it'll depend on the town hall. Some of them are monthly, some of them are quarterly. That's about the frequency we see right now.
Wow. So somehow it continues.
It continues, and we continue to have great attendance. And we as staff have been using it for some of our content for our live event programming, kind of understanding the trends that are out there, but we want to dig into it deeper. But yeah, it's member-led, member-run. We definitely support it. We provide guidance for it. There are times we as staff will put stuff in, like, hey, we're hearing this. Is this actually something that's going on? Can you talk us through this a little bit more? So, I mean, it's still as valuable for staff as well.
Well, let's turn to something different. You do a fair amount of research.
Yes.
Talk to us about that. What are you doing, and why is it important, and why are you doing the research?
So research is extremely important, I think, in a lot of industries, but particularly for the venue management profession. One of the things that happened, and we saw this within the events industry overall during the beginning of the pandemic, was being able to talk about the economic impact of live events and meetings inside a particular community. And that's where a lot of associations have been working collectively. We have been part of that to help really understand what's going on and helping to build those things out, so we have that information going in the future. One of our partnerships has been with Destinations International about using their events industry calculator, which calculates the impact of events that come into a destination. One of the things we've discovered is they don't always work with the convention center, because a CVB, while they're helping to book a lot of the business, about a year to 18 months out from the year you're in, that's usually when they stop selling it. It turns more over to the convention center, for example. So the convention center helps fill those dates with your wedding fairs, your car shows, a lot of these local things that you may not have hotel room nights for.
Oh, that the CVB doesn't necessarily know about.
Right, because they wouldn't do it, because they help bridge the hotel and the convention center. And so a good example in exploring this is there was one destination that, when the CVB was using the calculator, demonstrated that the annual economic impact was about $12 million a year. When they added in all the things that were happening on the convention center side, it actually moved up to $35 million.
Wow.
Answering the question of why do we have this big convention center here? Someone who doesn't go in, they think it's a waste of money, but we're seeing, like, by economic impact, we're talking about sleeping room nights. We're talking about people coming into restaurants. We're talking about people shopping in local things around it. Like, this is the kinds of things we're looking for. So data is really key. We talk about live events and venues. Sometimes they're municipally owned, either by the county, the city, the state. They have to report to other governing bodies about what's going on and what's happening and how they're really contributing. So having that data is really important. We're also working on revitalizing some benchmarking reports. As convention centers in particular, but all of our venues are going through various means of renovations and transitions. What is the ballroom size for a convention center versus exhibit size based off the type of destination?
Oh, interesting. So people kind of know where they are in relation to other venues and maybe their competition.
Right. We're exploring a potential partnership with another organization on creating a sustainability benchmarking for various venue types. So they can see, like, here's what's actually happening in terms of sustainability practices for a performing arts center versus arena versus stadium. And individually, they can come in and say, well, here's where we are. Here's the efforts we're trying to do. Here's the legislative things in our state that are dictating X, Y, and Z. How does this all fit together? So data is really important for us to help be able, one, to articulate back to the members and then use in their daily lives. But second, as we are articulating our value proposition, our story to the general public, to federal legislators, to other partner organizations who also have a stake in this, why this is important, why these venues add the value that they do to the overall ecosystem that is there. So data is extremely important for us. And I'm really excited about how we're getting ready to ramp that up as we move forward.
Well, Trevor, it's one thing to collect this data, but how do you then raise awareness of the data and the importance of your members? So what are you doing in that area?
That's something that I am passionate about. It's been a lot of opportunity for me to really flex part of my skill, but I think also have been a long time member within ASE, leveraging a lot of my partnerships, is having conversations with so many partner organizations. I find it really interesting how when I talk about where I'm at, what I'm doing, people who've known me for years or people who don't, and I finally just say, you have a meeting, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, so your meeting happened at X convention center. They're like, yeah. I was like, that convention center, their staff is my member. They're like, oh, or we're at a concert. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go say hi to the general manager who's here real quick. They look at me like kind of crazy because I'm with friends. And I was like, these are my members. Like,
Right.
you're in a space that my members run. Like, this is what we do. And so part of me is just being able to use that opportunity to tell that story, to help people connect with the physical space to a positive memory they have, and why investment in and understanding the value that these spaces have and why they are so important to all of that is really valuable. And then the second piece is from a legislative standpoint, as we work on our advocacy efforts, as we work on various things, whether it be around one, we were helping an issue in California where they were asking that all convention centers have electric powered forklifts by 2026. We were full support of it. Our members were in full support of it. The problem we ran into was the supply for the actual equipment was not able to meet the demand by that timeline. So we worked to move the date. So everybody was full agreement, but we had to do this and we had to really work on it. The other thing we're working on to fix the Tick Coalition with a couple other organizations around ticketing, making sure that surcharges and extra fees on concert tickets are transparent and clear, that if you're booking, you know exactly who the seller is. So if it's through a reseller site, you know that they actually have possession of those tickets. Basically, we're trying to prevent the whole situation that happened with Taylor Swift and all the other concerts that are happening around the US in particular, about how do we take care of that. So we have an opportunity to leverage what our members do and raise that awareness within those spaces to help move things forward.
Trevor, you got a big year ahead of you. IAVM celebrated its 100th anniversary last year, and this year it's your 100th conference. What are you looking forward to in the next 3 to 5 years? Maybe not the next 100 years? What's it going to look like?
I have so many ideas of what it's going to look like. For me, I will contribute success to having an organization that is thriving in terms of its membership, both in numbers, but also in its actual satisfaction of what we're providing, that we are publicly known and aware, particularly by our industry partners and those legislative individuals that need to be aware of us to make sure that we're impacting positive change for not only our venues, but for the public. And second, that we continue to evolve as an association that meets the current and future needs of our members. That's the big things I want to see. But what I'm really excited about in using the 100th anniversary as a kicking off point is this is a time when people start thinking about, we can do different. We can be different. If they're going to give me any grace of change, now is the time.
Right? Because they're thinking about the future.
They are. You think milestone, you think, ooh, something big and something splashy. Our annual conference this upcoming year, we're making some minor adjustments. We're using industry trends that are out there. We're thinking about what should this look like for the future. We're not changing a lot that I can say yet. There's still things to be determined. Who knows? But the whole thing right now is we're challenging our why in everything we do. Why is this conference here? Why is this what we're doing? Why should we be doing it? How do we honor our members? How do we recognize them professionally? If we understand our purpose as a guide, that helps us make clear and concise decisions on what we need to do in the future. And I will say we've already challenged some of our thinking of maybe we should do this differently. Maybe there is a better way today than what we did in the past. We just haven't had time to think about it. So I'm excited about being that provocateur, that person to say, like, what if? And infuse that energy. And it's not lost on me that this is a unique opportunity. Most CEOs do not come in at a milestone anniversary like this. And I'm not going to let it fall by the wayside.
Well, Trevor, you are a provocateur and a big thinker in the association space. I got to have you back in the future so that you can tell us about the year that you had and you can share all the amazing things coming up next. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. You can have me back anytime you want. I'm happy to come back.
I'm holding you to that. Thanks for listening to Associations Thrive. We're so glad to have you here. You know, my personal mission and the mission of my company, Matrix Group International, is to help associations and nonprofits increase membership, generate revenue, and thrive in the digital space. I want to hear stories of how your organization is thriving in today's challenging landscape. Please apply to be on my show by going to podcast.matrixgroup.net. By the way, do you need help with a digital initiative? Maybe it's a website redesign, a new membership database, or a hybrid meeting that you're planning. I'd love to connect with you. Please visit the Matrix Group website at matrixgroup.net. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of Associations Thrive. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a 5-star rating, post a comment, and share it with your colleagues and friends. Bye!